Hello Commandos, I want to give a big shout out to our channel members. These guys support the channel and help create the high quality gameplay content. You guys rock. Go Commando. Hello everyone, welcome to Dice Commando and the Commando Cast. I'm Andrew, coming to you from my office yet again. I just really didn't feel like setting up the studio for tonight's cast, honestly. So what I wanted to talk about tonight real quick is the Trandoshan Hunter. There was a lot of discussion happening just today on the global board, so I kind of want to talk about him in general and what I think needs to happen to him. Hey guys, so welcome back to kind of a quick hit. Before we get into it, I just want to say we just got done recording a bunch of games with the members on TTS. Actually had a lot of fun. We had a channel going. We were all kind of talking smack back and forth. Had a really good time. So if you're interested in getting on that, please do. It was a great time. Really enjoyed it. So thank you guys for doing that. Also, before we get into this, talking about the Hunter, the reason, the impetus for this cast was there was a lot of discussion on the global Facebook page today about the Trandoshan Hunter, right? So let's go into him real quick, and then I'll kind of go into why I want to talk about him, right? So Trandoshan Hunter is, ironically, he was actually spoiled on our channel. Mike and I got to spoil him way back in November. So he is 8 cost, power action, spotted downgrade, turn one of your bounty hunter dice to side showing damage, right? So the real rundowns and what will end up being the discussion and problem on this guy, right, is spotted downgrade does not have to be a bounty downgrade, it can be any downgrade. Turn one of your bounty hunter dice does not have to be his die, it can be any bounty hunter dice to a side showing damage, right? The most limiting part of that is damage, and that's not really that limiting considering what you're trying to do with this guy, right? So the next part of this, right, is the quick discussion on this is that our friends over at Echo Base, they released an article today that featured the winner of the last Entourage late night tournament that happened last week, and he was running double Trandoshans and loose. And before we go into that, first I want to give a shout out to the Echo Base guys, right? They're relatively new on the content creator scene in Destiny, but they're coming out swinging, and they're actually, I want to give a huge shout out to these guys because they've picked up kind of the written word side of the content creation that has really very much dropped off. So because there's a lot of people who want to read something, they want to log in from work, and granted, I know a lot of us aren't necessarily at work, our work is home or whatever it is these days, right? I get that, but there's definitely a place people don't want to watch videos, they don't want to listen to a podcast, whatever, they just want to sit down and read something. And Echo-Base has really filled that slot, and they're doing it very well. They've moved into very much covering the competitive scene, they're covering tournaments, like they actually have a tournament result tab on their page, so go check them out if that's something you're interested in. It's echobase.me, right? That's what you should go check out. They're really doing a good job, and good shout out to that guy, right? Mark Logie is really the face of that organization. I want to be clear, I'm sure he has people that are helping him and he can do those own shout outs, but he's done a very good job promoting the channel, or I shouldn't say channel, promoting the website, and they're doing a lot of good things over there. And really any content we can get in Destiny right now, as many content creators are dropping out, is really a good thing, so huge shout out to them. So this is what they brought today. This was the article that went up today that spawned the conversation that is really the impetus of this cast. Is the winner of last week's tournament was playing double Trandoshan loose, which is obviously very, very different from, well, I mean, not very, very different, but it brings a very different perspective to the Imperial Death Trooper version of the double Trandoshans, which we're all quite familiar with as basically shaping the meta as it is right now. So the interesting part is what came in that is there was a quote, and I commented on it, right? And that's what I want to be very clear in tonight is there was a very good discussion between Mark, myself, and Whoosh, I hope I'm saying that correctly, about what is said here. He said, but the community in general doesn't seem to share my opinion, or there are Trando bashing threads I don't know about. And then Echo 7, which is Mark, said, I'd be inclined to agree here. The community doesn't seem to think Trandos are a problem. As for me, I'm still undecided. So basically the long story short here is both of them seem to be inclined towards the Trandoshans are broken and there's a problem with the Trandoshans, but they didn't think the community was supporting them. And that kind of blew my mind because I feel personally that the majority of the community feels the Trandoshans are broken. Right, so what was really interesting about it is it very much fits into the last cast that, or I guess it was 2 casts ago I had where I was talking about perceptions of meta and how your perception of what meta is, your locals, whatever, can shape that, right? And one of the arguments that Mark made in our... I want to be very careful saying argument, right? Because I don't feel like we're arguing. I feel like we're having a very good discussion. One of the points he made was that he's like, well, the Hyperloops don't think that he's broken. I'm like, yeah, but the Hyperloops is the most uber competitive group of people in Destiny, and they're on droids, right? So if the people who are on droids, which is arguably the more broken thing out there, don't think that the broken thing is broken, I don't know that that's a fair argument, right? So anyway, the impetus of this was to share my opinion on the Trandoshan, and where we stand there. And again, I don't want to throw shade on anybody. And in fact, I actually want to call attention to the fact that, back in December, so again, remember, Dice Commando were the ones who actually were able to spoil the Trandoshan, and the day after we were able to do that, and it was December 6th, I posted a cast outlining the deck Muddy Trandoshans, which was 2 elite Trandoshans and the Mud Trooper, which so again, we didn't know about Face the Enemy at the time. We didn't know about a lot of the tech tools. I don't think we knew about Forced Labor at that time. But generally, the framework for the deck, I presented that, right? So, since December, we've known about this, and that was, 2.5 months before we even got the set. I'm not saying I was early on. Everybody got it. I'm not saying that. But my point is, I'm not throwing shade on anybody for playing that. I'm not throwing shade on anybody for coming up with that. I'm not saying you're a horrible person because, we were on it too, right? I've played it many a time. But kind of the point is, he was so obvious. One day after we spoiled the guy, everybody was on this. He's so obviously busted. And the reason I'm saying he's busted and he's broken is because of what he does, right? So, let's go ahead and bring the guy up again, right? Spot a downgrade, turn one of your bounty hunter dice to a side showing damage, right? So, what is one of the main balancing mechanics in Destiny is rolling dice, right? Why are droids so freaking broken right now? Because they don't need to roll good, right? Why are the Trandoshans so broken? Because they don't need to roll, right? And what's even worse about this guy is he doesn't need to flip. He doesn't need to only flip his own dice, right? It doesn't say this die. It's any bounty hunter die, right? So if you're running a whole bunch of bounty hunters, you can flip any die, right? This guy has 2 problems, right? 2 problems, in my opinion. One, he can flip any die on the table, right? So you roll out a Trandoshan, he rolls good. Let's say he rolls a 2 and a 3 for 1. Okay? The other Trandoshan rolls out and he hits something that's not damage and a 1. Okay, you power action to flip. You power action to flip, right? Even if he rolls good, the other guy rolls bad, now the other guy doesn't roll bad anymore. Not having to worry about rolls is a huge problem in this game. Consistently, we've seen that, right? Ewoks, droids, Trandoshan, right? All problem decks we've seen in this, right? So, again, I just want to be very clear. There are definitely people and threads and parts of this community that think this guy is broken, right? And just because he's not as broken as droids are, or just because he's not as intimidating, or just because he's not as deadly as droids are, and just because he has some pairings like Raylo or shield decks or whatever that can take the Trandoshans down, doesn't mean that he doesn't still have a problem, right? There are aspects of this community who may not be the ones that you're interacting with who definitely think that Trandoshan is a problem, right? And another part of this is it was very interesting because, again, part of the meta discussion I was having previously was it depends on who you deal with and what your perspective is, right? So me and a lot of the people who I interact with online and part of the Commando channel, which are naturally people, granted, who are attracted to similar lines of thinking as myself and Mike, right? We don't want to play what we consider to be broken stuff. So when we see a lot of people not playing Trandoshans, we naturally think, well, the reason people aren't playing Trandoshans, the reason people aren't playing droids, is because they don't want to play the stuff that's broken. Right, in this case, one of the argument that Mark made, he's like, well, I'm not seeing a lot of people playing Trandoshans in the artificery tournaments and stuff like that. And my argument would be, well, yeah, because there's nothing super awesome to win. People are still exploring. They're trying to learn from this. And his argument was, well, they're not playing it, so it must not be good. So, I mean, that's definitely a valid meta argument, right? And that doesn't mean he's wrong. It doesn't mean I'm right. It doesn't mean I'm wrong. It doesn't mean he's right, right? It's just a valid take on what it is. So anyway, with that said, I mean, the whole point of what I'm trying to do here is it was not an argument with Mark. It was a very valid conversation with him that kind of spawned me wanting to have this discussion about how I personally think that the Trandoshan needs fixed. So to that end, here is my proposal. This is the Dice Commando, the Andrew proposal on how Trandoshan Hunter should be fixed, right? So leave everything about him the same, right? There's been a lot of proposals out there. It was like, well, let's adjust his points, which of course is an easy move. We can try restricting him. I've even heard a proposal of put him on the restricted list so that in theory he couldn't pair with himself, which is an interesting proposal. But here's my proposal, right? So you leave everything the same points, same stats, same health, but you change him, right? Very similar to how we did like a Snoke. Change his power action to choose a character, turn this die to a side showing damage with a value equal to or less than the number of downgrades on that character, right? So this attacks, right? Remember earlier I held up my fingers, 1, 2, right? Problem 1, him being able to fix other characters' dice, I think is bad. I think it's a dumb idea. So by saying this character, it means he can only fix his own dice. Okay, so you take that away. Furthermore, you put the Gauntlet Rockets ability on him, basically. So it's not just having one downgrade on the table. You have to have multiple downgrades on the same person to be able to flip to multiple damage. So you throw 1 on, he can flip to his 1. I mean, that's not that big a deal. Throw 2 on, which is perfectly I mean, that can absolutely happen first round. Okay, now you have 2 on. It also kind of mitigates that IG-88 pairing. I'm not saying that's a broken pairing. It's definitely a tier 2 pairing. But in that, you'd throw 1 on each guy. Well, now this guy could only flip to his 1. IG-88 couldn't flip at all. Right? So I think this is a really good potential balancing mechanic. And the reason I don't like messing with his point cost is because he, as an elite character, like, I like the elite characters as a deck building mechanic. Like, there's a lot of good options. People like, I think Death Troop is great. I think Praetorians are great. I even think this guy is great. There's a lot of options out there, and I don't want to destroy that by putting him at 10-12, or even if they did a +0/+1 and put him at 9-12. Although, to be fair, I do want to say that putting him with Battle Droid, I don't think, if you put him at 12, you could still play him with Battle Droid. And I don't think it really loses you all that much, right? I mean, against droids it does, but that's a different discussion, right? So anyway, this is my proposal. I think that the main takeaway from this should be that there are contingents out there who are really worried about Trandoshan. Just because people aren't playing the Trandoshan in casual games and stuff doesn't mean that the guy's not good, right? So yeah, that's my take. You know, I mean, basically, I've been talking too long, so let's wrap this up. But point is, you know, let me know what you guys are thinking as well. I do think that Trandoshan is in kind of a rock, paper, lizard, Spock type of deal in the top tier decks. But I think that himself is really very meta warping in that he's keeping a lot of decks out of actual real contention. And he's squashing a lot of creativity, except in realms where people know that they're not going to run up against him. And I don't think that Raylo's having that same effect. I do think Droids is to a certain extent having that effect, which, I mean, Droids is his own problem, don't get me wrong. We've tried to nerf Droids, 3 times now, and it still hasn't worked. Because we keep running into this problem where in this game where we have to roll dice, not having to roll dice is a problem, right? Either way, I don't know. So that's my take. Again, I just want to be very supportive of the community, that there are definitely parts of the community who are not fans of the Trandoshan, or at least, I should say it differently, are aware that Trandoshan himself is a problem. I think that Trandoshan needs fixed. I do believe in my heart that if we had gotten that RRG that we were supposed to get pre-Worlds, which who the heck knows when that's going to come, and there's really no reason it shouldn't come, but who knows what's going on with FFG. I think if that had come, I think Trandoshan would have gotten nerfed, but we're a month past that at this point, and it's not here. So, but either way, I don't think that just because of that it means that Trandoshan isn't, still a problem. So anyway, that's my piece. I've been talking too long anyway, but I wanted to thank you all for joining me. Please let me know what your thoughts are in the comments. If nothing else, go Commando.